Today on You're a Better Artist Than You Think, 12 tips for finishing ambitious creative projects with animation visual development artist and comics creator Victoria Ying. Whenever I hear artists talk about how they're not excited about a long-term project anymore, I always think that's a problem with expectations. You know, do you really think you're going to stay, quote unquote, excited about it the whole time? You've made multiple long-form projects at this point. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're definitely right. It's a mismatch of your expectation versus what you're actually doing. And I think that for a lot of people, we are very used to creating like one illustration and then being able to share it right away, or even just like a longer term thing. Maybe you're working at a studio and you're creating a illustration or a background painting and you usually show it within the week. But when it comes to like a long form project, something like a graphic novel or a film, you really don't get to show it for years. When I signed the contract for my book versus when it came out, there was a span of 5 years between that.
Wow.
Yeah, it feels very, very difficult because you're so used to this instant gratification, especially with the internet. And that can be something that's really challenging for a lot of people. For me, I was able to kind of figure my way through long form projects because I started small. So you start with like a small project that's like an 8-page comic. And then you're not sitting on it for years. You're sitting on it for like a few months, maybe, you know? And then you kind of get more used to that discomfort of waiting. Unlike a one-panel illustration or, you know, just like a like something you put up on Instagram where you're just like, I did it and then I posted it within an hour. Having that time and sitting with it and getting used to that discomfort, that is something that takes a while, but it is a muscle like anything else. And the more practice you have with it, the easier it gets.
Was that hard at any point to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really hard at the beginning because it's not just the time you're working on it. You also have all this time where after it's finished, you are waiting for it to be printed, for the marketing team to get to it, like all this stuff. There's usually like a span of a year between when you finish a book and when it gets published. And that year can feel like forever. So That's definitely something that is difficult. But at the same time, I think that having something like that come out, something major and something longer form, it's so satisfying and there's really no way to get around it. And I think that for everyone, the biggest challenge is just sitting with that discomfort and being okay with it. But then once it's out, like you get a different kind of satisfaction and you have to build to that. It's worth it. But yeah, it's definitely hard. And it takes a while to get used to. You know, it's like running, I think. You can't expect to run a marathon right away. You have to train for it. And even with something like long form comics, that's something you can train for by just starting out smaller before diving into like a huge 200, 300 page book.
Yeah. Easy come, easy go.
Yeah.
Hey friends, we'd like to take just a moment and invite you to join the Magic Box Brush Club at digitalartbrushes.com. There you can claim your 100% free lifetime membership to the Magic Box Brush Club and get new digital art brushes with accompanying tutorial guides every month for an entire year. Visit digitalartbrushes.com and join the Magic Box Brush Club today. What role does emotion play in the long game of a project?
There is an emotional component in how it is difficult to sit with a project for a long, long time and just not be able to share it, not be able to get feedback, not be able to talk about it even for a long time. That can be really challenging. I think the biggest emotional barrier when you're in the bulk of the process, which is the inking and the coloring, like that part of it, I think the biggest emotion is actually just boredom. I am very experimental with how I work. So I try different brushes, I try different color things. I love absorbing different styles and different influences and all that stuff. When you're doing a graphic novel, you can't change your influence page to page, week to week, right? You're almost like an assembly line, you know, it's like this part goes into here and this, and that can be really, really boring for someone like me because I love trying new things, but you know, I just have to accept that it's going to be boring.
Yeah.
And that's just a part of it. And that's just okay. We get very used to the idea if we need to solve the problem. Like, oh no, this is uncomfortable and this is boring. How do I make it interesting? And it's like, no, you're just not going to. This part of your life is going to be a little boring. And that's just part of it. And then you can find that excitement somewhere else. But you have to show up every day. You have to. And that's a big, big part of getting something like this done. You just have to be willing to slog through the parts that are not fun. And a lot of it's not very fun.
Have you read Atomic Habits by James Clear?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. I loved what he said there about boredom. He asked his personal trainer, who are the people that really excel? And, you know, what's the difference if you have been able to perceive any? And the trainer says it's the people who learn to love the boredom. You know, once the early gains, the thrill of that is gone, do you keep showing up and doing the work? And graphic novels or any other ambitious project is the exact same way. You know, you have to learn to love the boredom. There's just no way around it. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if you don't love the boredom, you know that it's temporary. It's long, like a graphic novel is going to take you about a year. And that's a long time, but it's not forever, you know?
Yeah.
And nothing lasts forever, even the good stuff. So at the end of it, I'll have something I'm really proud of.
Yeah. What advice do you have for artists who are ready to attempt a longer, more ambitious project, but things like the day job or freelance work, things like that are just constantly interfering?
The first thing I would tell you is figure out how long every part of the process takes you. How many hours does it take you to do a page of thumbnails? How many hours does it take you to do a page of inks? And then work backwards from there to be like, okay, my book is going to be 250 pages long. So if I know that and I know exactly how many hours each of these things is going to take me, how do I slot that into my actual life? Not like an ideal version of your life, your actual life. A lot of times your publisher will be like, oh, here is the date that we want it by. And a lot of newer artists, especially people who have not necessarily worked with a publisher before, will be like, oh no, I don't know if I can do that. The truth is you can push back on that. You can be like, actually, I need another year. But the only way to do that is to do it early. You have to do it right when you're getting the contract. So then they have that expectation of you. And the only way to do that is to know exactly how long every step takes you. Then you know, okay, realistically, it's going to take me 2.5 years. And your publisher, as long as they know that, that's fine. Obviously, they would like it sooner, but the truth is that their schedules are so far out, it doesn't really matter, just as long as they know ahead of time. And I think a lot of young people will see a number, like they'll be like, oh, they want this book next year. So I got to like really, you know, pull all-nighters. I got to do all this stuff. You do not have to do that. You have a lot of power in this situation, and you have to exercise that early because it's way harder to negotiate that stuff after once they've started setting up their schedule. Then it becomes much more difficult for you to be like, actually, I need another 6 months. The other thing I would also recommend, especially as, you know, we are freelancers and we are contractors, not only should you make sure that these contracts and these deadlines are working around your current life circumstance, also remember to build in things like vacation, sick days. There's a lot of times where people are like, oh, well, at my maximum level, I can work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day or something.
Right.
And like you don't have to. And if you don't leave yourself enough time to get sick, to go see your family at Christmas, you are going to make your own life harder. And as long as you tell your publishers and your agent, this is what I need, this is how long it's going to take me, then everyone will be fine with it. You just have to know that ahead of time. And a lot of times people don't. People are like, oh, I'll just accept whatever deadline they give me. And it's like, no, you need to like stand your ground early and know what a realistic expectation is, both for you and for your publisher.
A lot of my students get stuck in the planning phase. Of course, that can be for all kinds of reasons, right? That could be fear, that could be just not having any sense of the path, a combination of those things. There's all kinds of reasons. What does that look like for you when you know, okay, it's time really to switch from exploration to execution?
I'm very eager to show people what I'm doing. I get very little satisfaction from planning. Like that does nothing for me. I need to like finish a thing and show it to somebody. And if you don't have something to show, then like you don't get that satisfaction. And I think that writing something short and completing it will train you to finish things. Finishing something and writing something or drawing and painting and all that stuff, that's a separate skill from finishing things. And you have to get good at finishing things. And the only way you do that is by finishing things, which means that you have to like finish your short story, share it, finish your short comic, share it, and then get used to that and get good at that. And for a lot of people, I think that they choose ambitious projects purposely because I think that it makes it so hard to finish that everyone understands when you don't, which is why you want to actually choose short projects. Just get it done, get it out the door. You don't build that skill. You don't build that muscle unless you do it. If you only pick ambitious projects, then yeah, it's going to take you a really long time to ever do it once. But if you pick short projects and you do a bunch of short projects, then you get really used to it and you understand what the circle looks like. And then you get better and better at it. So then when you have the big project, you can finish it because you know what that looks like and you're very used to doing it.
I was wondering if we could maybe dig a little bit into this idea of building a consistent daily routine and how that's been important in all the things you've achieved.
Personally, for me, one thing that has helped is knowing myself very well. I have ADHD, and I know that a lot of people recommend a routine. Routine has actually never been something that works for me. Every day I wake up at 8 and I go make breakfast and I go to the gym and da-da-da-da. Like, I can't do that. It drives me crazy. I get super bored. And I don't know, there's some part of me that just wants to rebel and it gets mad. And yeah, like it's just like, no, don't want to do that. So I've leaned into that. I've decided that's okay. I'm not going to force myself to be a different person.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work. Like the more that you try to do that, the harder it becomes, the more you struggle, the more shame you feel when you can't get a consistent routine. And so, you know, as much as that works for some people, happy for those people who it works for. I've never been that person, you know, like that's just never, ever been me. So the thing that does work for me, though, is I will have checklists, this little dopamine hits, right? So I love checking off a box. I love scratching out a to-do list item, right?
Can relate so hard to that.
Yeah. It feels so good. Right. And yeah. And like I have to do it consistently, right? For example, I have a Notion template for each of my books.
Nice.
And I even have one for like every week and every day. And then on the day, I have 3 separate items. So then every time I finish a page, I can be like, check. I get to like make that little check. And it makes me feel good. And I know that I have to do that, right? So like wherever I can fit it in, I will do it. So it's like today I want to go to the gym. I'm going to have lunch with a friend. I'm going to make dinner. I know what I have to do. And I will do it whenever I feel like it. But as long as I get it done that day, then that's good enough. And I try to not be too strict with myself because that's when I know things are going to fall apart. I'm in a constant battle with this other person who is the creative part of me, you know, that part of me that I love. That person is an amazing artist and thinker. But at the same time, there's the manager side of me that's like, okay, well, you can't just be that. You also have to like get things done on deadlines, da, 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 da. So I know I have to do 20 pages of thumbnails a week to get this done by this date. That means that every day I have to do 5 pages. So then I will create a little list every day that will have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I can check each off one. Once I complete it, I have another one that's like pages done. I know what works for me. And that's something that does work for me is checking things off. We get so caught up in like, what are other people doing? And how do I match exactly their routine so I can get what they're doing done?
Yeah.
And I've never found that to work for myself. But the way that I've been able to make it work for me is that I know myself. This is who I am. And this is, you know, how this is going to work for me.
I love that you really emphasize that idea of being kind to yourself and knowing yourself. Was that something that came easily to you, or was that something that you really had to put the time in to work on?
I think I didn't really know myself until I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And part of that is just being too caught up in like transforming myself into who I wanted to be. That's in our culture, right? Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you get out of college? Who is this fictional person that you want to be? And there's not enough time spent with who are you right now? Who are you in your heart? A lot of people don't know that about themselves because we don't value that in our society. We don't value the idea of knowing yourself and accepting the parts of you that are difficult to talk about or things that you don't like about yourself. I'm not saying you can't change. You should be willing to look at yourself and think, okay, maybe I am late all the time. And that is maybe something I don't like and nobody else likes it. But like, how do I accept what parts of me are making me late all the time? And how do I like adapt rather than fighting it, rather than making me feel bad about it? What if I just set a 1 hour timer on my phone every time that there's an event I have to go to so that I know like, okay, I got to start getting ready now. What are the ways that you can work with yourself? Be like, okay, I'm always late. Why am I always late? Try to figure that out and not just be like, well, you should be more on time. What are the things standing in my way? What are those friction areas? The smoother that you can move through your own life and find the points that are sticking, the easier those things that you find challenging are going to be. For me, I need that reward because I get so bored. I am bored doing the inking portion of my book, which is like 8 months of work. And I'm going to be bored for 8 months. So like, what do I do? You got to know yourself first.
It's really about meeting yourself where you are right now.
I've been there, right? So I know what that's like. I know what it's like to look at an artist and be like, I want their career. I want to be exactly like them. And then you look at their daily routine and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do exactly what they do. But you are not that person. And even if you copied exactly what they did hour to hour, minute to minute, you may not have that result. You have to work with what you got. And yeah, like the hyper-focus thing, that is very useful for a lot of people. If you know that you get that way sometimes, you can figure out how do you use that to your advantage.
Right.
So for me right now, I'm really hyper-focused on crochet.
Oh my God, so cool.
My office is full of boxes that are like little hobbies. Each one is its own little hobby because I just get obsessed. And I buy all the stuff. So like right now, I'm like hyper-focused on crochet. And I know that I sleep thinking about it. That's the thing in my brain. But I can't just do that. I have work to do. I will be like, okay, if you do 30 minutes of work, then you get to crochet for 30 minutes. So like I will trick myself. I know it's a little bit of like treating yourself like a dog. You're like training yourself with like little things, but like maybe just be okay with that and be like, yeah, you know what? If this works, then it works.
Also, dogs are awesome.
Right?
Yeah,
Right? Who wouldn't want to be a dog?
Yeah, dogs are great. So, no problem there.
Yeah, that's just great. Are there other things that you look at when you're trying to make the deadline more meaningful rather than just a number on a piece of paper in your calendar?
One of the first things that really helped me to figure out how to do long form was actually doing NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. And that is a project where you write a novel in 30 days. And it's a 50,000 word novel. It breaks down to like 1,300 words a day or something. It takes me about like 45 minutes to do that number. However, there are days where like you will just not get anything done for some reason. Shit happens. And you miss a day. You're like, oh crap. Okay, well, I missed a day, but that just means that like every day I have to now do 2,000 words a day. That's fine. It's still manageable. It's still like an hour of work every day and I can still do that. But then like you start falling behind a lot. And then there's a point of no return. I think it's like 7 days. And then you're like, I can't. There's just no way for me to be able to catch up again. And having that experience of knowing I cannot miss another day because this is going to build up too much that every day I won't be able to get that done is something that has kept me consistent because I know one day is fine. I can forgive myself. I can make it up. But if I miss too many days in a row, it's going to build up so much that I will not get that done. In order to save myself that future pain of being like, oh no, I missed my deadline, I just know that no matter what, I have to get these 3 pages done. Right. And because it's easy, because it's simple, it makes it much easier for me to reach that big goal because I know that I'm doing a little bit every single day. And that is pretty much how I do it. I know a lot of people are like really good at like pulling all-nighters and like working, 18 hours a day. I've never been able to do that. I have never pulled an all-nighter in my entire life, not even in college.
Good for you.
I mean, a lot of people are like, wow, that's amazing. But honestly, it's just because I really like to sleep. It is my hobby. Like, if people are like, what do you like to do in your free time? Sleep. Okay.
Oh,
That is huge. Every time my doctor's like, how's your sleep? I'm like, amazing. I get 10 hours a night. I love it. It's like my favorite thing in the world. And so because I value that so much, I make sure that I'm never in a position where I can't get the amount of sleep that I want, And I know for a lot of people, like, that's not a thing for them. Like, I am the boring girl at the sleepover where it's 10 o'clock and I'm like, all right, good night, everybody. It's just something it's always been that way for me. Like, even as a kid, even when I was like in middle school and we were having sleepovers watching scary movies, I'd be like, okay, I'm tired now. Goodbye.
Hilarious.
So, like, that has worked in my advantage. That's partly why I'm so good at being able to just get work done consistently, is because I know if I don't, then I'm not going to get to do my favorite thing, which is sleep.
I love it. And it's also a good balance where you're not pushing your body too far, because it's so easy to then burn out or risk injury.
This job is so physical and people don't understand that because they feel like, oh, you're just sitting down all day. That's hard on your body. I'm almost 40 now. So the consequences of not taking care of yourself and like not being aware of your ergonomic setup and taking care of yourself physically, it will get you. And we don't have a lot of options, especially as freelancers, especially as contractors. People in animation with the union and 401k pension, like, that's great. But like, if you're in comics, you don't have any of that stuff.
Right.
So being able to work is very, very important, and being able to work long term. If you crunch like crazy on a book and then hurt yourself and then you can't work for a year or more, that's going to severely impact your life. So it's really important for young people, especially, to take care of themselves. I know this sucks. This is like the worst news I'm going to give you guys, but exercising makes you feel better. Drinking enough water, like, oh my God.
So true.
Bad news, everybody, but it actually works. It works.
I was wondering if you yourself have experienced any significant setbacks and what you might advise for artists in similar situations.
When I started my career in publishing, I was in animation for a long time, and I had a book agent who was doing picture books with me. And I had this big project I wanted to do. I wrote this steampunk story, and I was really proud of it. I really liked it, and I wanted to publish it. I was like, oh, I have an agent. Like, this shouldn't be too hard. So I sent it to her, and she was just like, I don't get it. I knew that it might not be, but it was really hard to think about, like, oh my God, the setback. I've gone from having an agent to going down to zero and having nothing. Like, I didn't have a day job. I didn't have my book agent, and she didn't like my book. And I was like, what do I do? She wasn't a good fit for me at the time because I needed someone who's going to champion my book. I need someone who believed in that book as much as I did. So it was a good thing that we split up. It was the right choice because the right agent is better than any agent. So after that, I went through the querying process, and I found an amazing agent who worked for a bigger agency, and she loved my book. And she loved the way I wrote, and she worked with me to polish it up to get it to a place to submit to publishers. And she sold that book for me, and we got a 2-book deal from Penguin Viking, and that book is out, Let me see if I have it.
Did that evolve into City of Secrets?
That is the City of Secrets.
Cool.
They are.
Loved those books, by the way. They're gorgeous.
Thank you. I definitely really liked those books. And she worked with me on those books. We worked together on the Diana books. But then she called me one day and was like, I'm quitting the business. So even though we had worked together so well and I worked so hard to find her, she left the business, which is not ununderstandable. It's a tough world, publishing. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta do it again. Here we go again. And then also in City of Secrets, the acquiring editor retired in the middle of the book. So like, I know. And if you're not in publishing, it's really hard when your acquiring editor leaves because the acquiring editor is the person who cared about your book enough to buy it.
Yeah.
And once they're gone, it's really, really hard to get anyone at the publishing house to care about your project again. Yes, it will be given to another editor who will like help you edit your book. But like once the person who championed it is gone, What's happening in marketing? What's happening on the inside? You have no idea, right? So that was really hard. And also my book came out in 2020. So that was also not amazing. My other project, which was over at DC Comics, which I was working with Shannon and Dean Hale, who are amazing, that editor was also let go in the middle of the project. I had no editors. I had no agent. It was like literally from square one. However, even though I felt like I was really, really set back now, I had published books. I had books that were out there. I had editors that I was working with.
Right.
I had projects on the table. Even though it felt like, oh my God, I have all these setbacks, all these things, terrible things have happened to my books. But I had still accomplished things in that meantime. And so the third time when I went out, that took me literally no time, because the third time someone was like, hey, Victoria's looking for representation. And then an agent reached out to me and was like, hey, I'd love to represent you. And I still spoke to some other people. Like, I didn't take the first offer. Never take the first offer. Very important. I still was able to like use the things that I had done already in the past to build on top of. So even though things had happened that could be devastating, it was still a good thing. I'm on my third agent right now, and she is amazing. We're very happy together. To other people who are struggling right now, who have had setbacks, you have still accomplished things. You've still made work. You still built that portfolio. You're still a better artist than you were when you started. So you are making progress, even though the industry or professionally things are not going well. You can still keep moving forward, even if the outside forces are making you feel like you're not. You are. And you've made stuff that you can show people now. And just keep making things. Victoria Schwab, who's one of my favorite authors and who's the person who inspired me to get into writing, she said, all roads lead back to writing. And I think for artists too, all roads lead back to creating. Because let's say that you go out with a book. Nobody wants it. Like, let's say nobody wants to buy it, right? Well, you got to write another book.
Right.
Let's say someone buys your book. Now you got to write the next book. So no matter what, every road leads back to doing the thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
So that's the same for artists too. Let's say that you submit a portfolio and then you get passed on. You got to make new work. You got to keep writing. Let's say that you get that job. Then you got to keep making work for that studio. So all roads are going to lead back to creation. You're going to have to keep making things no matter what. So as long as you know that, and as long as you are happy about that fact, like as long as you just want to keep making stuff, then there will always be an opportunity eventually.
What advice do you have for those moments where we, in our own projects, just kind of start to hate everything?
Oh my God. So this is a thing that happens to me all the time. And the thing that I've learned, again, this is like knowing yourself. I know that at about 20% of a project, I'll start hating it. I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. Why did I choose this project? Why did I decide that I wanted to do this? There were so many other ideas. I should have done those. I know, because I've done it so many times, that at 20%, I'm going to hate it. And then once I get to 50%, then I'm like, damn, this is pretty good. I know exactly where those moments are. And I know to just keep pushing past it. You can only know that if you keep doing it, if you finish things.
Right.
Just get to the end. It doesn't matter if it's good. It doesn't matter. Just get to the end. Just finish it and then come back and fix it. Because this is the moment where you will give up if you let yourself give up.
Graphic novels are notoriously lonely work. What's your advice for dealing with that? Because, I mean, it can hurt.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this question would have been a bigger mystery to people before 2020. I think we all know a little bit about what being lonely at work feels like now. For graphic novelists and people who are in this place consistently, always working from home, not necessarily having that network, not having that connection, you have to build that for yourself. You have to find your own community. That could mean online, could be Discords, it could be, I keep wanting to like list social media sites, but it's hard now.
It's a tricky time.
It's hard. I'm on Blue Sky.
Blue Sky's awesome, though. Yeah, I love
Blue Sky. Discords are great. And I think more and more we need to find our communities in person and in
Yeah.
our local, literally in our community, right? We need to go out there, meet people in real life. Look at their faces, have conversations. It's so easy, especially after the pandemic, to just want to be like, oh, well, I just don't want to drive anywhere, and I don't really want to spend my whole afternoon in a place far from home. And then like, what if I don't get work done? You can make a million excuses to not go out. And I think we do. And we've like weirdly romanticized that now. We're like, ooh, bed rotting. Ooh, like, no. That attitude, I understand it, and I do that all the time. I spent my entire day on Saturday on the couch. Like, I do it. But at the same time, it's really important now, I think more than ever, that we get out there and we actually meet our community where they are. And I think that for a lot of graphic novelists and people who work from home, finding your artistic community, finding your professional community, those things are going to be hugely important, not just for your mental health, but also for the future. Because, as we were saying with social media, like who knows where any of this is going? People will always be there. Go to your like local zine fest. Go to your like local comic cons. Talk to people in person, have coffees with people. Even if you can't find it, you can do that. You can just be like, hey, do you want to get coffee? Great, let's do it. Hey, do you want to do like a comics meetup once a week? Great. You can build that community for yourself too.
Yep. People write me all the time and say, I can't find a community. And I always say, well, we have one. You should come over here. But then also, if you're looking for something else, start one.
Yeah, start one.
You're the one with the itch.
Yeah. You don't even have to necessarily be like, oh, it has to be comics people. In LA, we have a huge community of artists who are all kinds of weirdos, right? Like we got graffiti artists, we got animation people, we've got illustrators, we've got fine artists, we got like all these different types of people. And being in community with them is also really, really important because they will share a lot of the same concerns as you, maybe in a different way, and maybe they have different resources, but at the same time, being able to know people who you can turn to is going to be really, really important. Even on a smaller scale, I know that my local library has a teen writing workshop. Yeah, look to your the institutions that are around you, like libraries, galleries, anything like that. A lot of them are going to have local programs. And you might be like, oh, that's just for like old retirees. That's fine. Hang out with them. There are so many people who are going to give you insight and bring you that kind of community and, make sure that you're not feeling lonely. And you can only really do that by reaching out, by being willing to like get off the couch and drive somewhere. We were talking about journaling earlier. I'm going to a journaling meetup later this afternoon. And these are not necessarily artists and animation or whatever, but we have one thing in common, which is we like journaling. We like putting stickers in our books and stuff like that. So like you can find communities that are adjacent to your other interests, like even a run club, whatever. Just try and get out there.
Yeah, geek out. Yeah. Vicky, as you know, we have some questions that we ask pretty much every guest on the podcast. Veronica, I think you're going to take the first one, and then I'll do a couple.
Sure thing. What is some of the best advice you've ever received?
I've definitely received the advice to read widely. That has been a really huge benefit to me because I fell away from reading for a long time in college, especially now as an adult, revisiting some old classics and reading books that aren't necessarily in my genres that are just for entertainment. You get a lot from it and you grow a lot as a person.
Oh, that speaks near and dear to my heart as a lifelong reader and patron of every library I've ever been next to. On the flip side of that question, what is some of the worst advice you've ever received?
I think the idea that you should just do mileage in your sketchbook and that will achieve something. I do think that obviously mileage is important and you need to practice, but you need to practice with your mind engaged. Choose what you're doing and practice with intention. And that's the only way you're actually going to get better.
Yeah, fundamentals are pointless unless you know why you're practicing those fundamentals. Every effective study has an objective. This is something artists struggle with. And then they come to me and they talk about how fundamentals are so boring. And I'm like, well, of course they are, because you don't know why you're doing it. It's just empty religion, Who is your favorite Muppet and why?
It's changed a lot, like I go through all these different phases. Right now, Miss Piggy is my favorite because the anger, the righteous justice and rage that she has. She stands up for herself. I feel like there's just something in me right now that is really identifying with Miss Piggy, and I want to karate chop somebody.
Awesome. So good. Our album art, our podcast art, is kind of Dumbo. It's an elephant holding a feather. This is representative, as you know, of something that one thought they needed, but later realized they don't actually need in order to fly, whatever fly means. What is your magic feather? What is something that you thought you needed, and then as you've developed as an artist, you've started to realize, you know what, I actually don't need that?
So for me, because I picked up writing much later in my career than drawing, and I felt very confident about my drawing, but I felt very insecure about my writing. When I started writing in my late 20s, when I really wanted to become better at this, I read every book I could get my hands on, every single book. I have shelves and shelves and shelves of writing craft books. I read so many of them, and I felt like I needed to know everything before I could write. And it turned out that I learned much more from just writing bad stories than the books really taught me. So do the thing. I really felt like I needed to learn everything first before I could do it, but nope, you can just do it.
Oh, yeah, give yourself permission. This last question is one we all get to participate in. There's 4 categories to it, and we'll start with Vicky, and then we can move on to you, Veronica,
Sure.
and then I'll wrap it up. But what are you currently reading?
Currently, I'm reading Station 11, which is a science fiction book about a bunch of theater people in an apocalypse.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's so good. They made like an Apple TV show, I think, or HBO. I think it's on HBO. Once I finish the book, I'm going to check out the TV show.
How about you, Veronica?
There's this old fantasy series called the Spelky Trilogy by Anne Downer. That was one of those series that I read way back when I was a kid. And so lately I've been doing a whole revisiting of certain things that made me really happy and really inspired my creativity as a younger artist. And so I've been rereading that trilogy. It's a very magical fantasy story geared towards like middle grade or young adult readers. And so it's just been really fun to experience the stuff that made me the geeky, nerdy artist that I am today, and that inspires me to keep working on stories.
Oh, that's huge. I'm reading Perfect Organism by Andy Kelly about the video game, the now 10 years old video game, Alien Isolation, which is, it might be my favorite video game.
Ooh.
It might be my favorite, but certainly it's way up there. But the book is awesome because it's part history of the video game, kind of making of behind the scenes stuff, and part director's commentary, except he wasn't the director of the game. He's just an extremely well-informed fan. It's so awesome. He goes through each mission, that is to say, level in the game, and writes it out almost as if it was a novel, but then interjects his commentary. Maybe there are other fun facts that he has that he waited until then to introduce, or he'll talk about creative decisions that were behind that particular aspect of the design of the game. Maybe it's aesthetics or the actual gameplay, and it is absolutely fascinating. Of course, if you're a fan of Alien Isolation, I would recommend the book. It's a no-brainer. But really, I think anybody who's interested in game development would find it really inspiring.
That's awesome.
It's great.
Yeah, I'm actually in game development right now.
Really?
Yeah. I know that our conversation focused mostly on writing and books.
Yeah.
But, I started working at an indie game studio this year called Studio MDHR, and they are amazing.
Wow, that's great. And you're going in-house and working?
No, so they're an all-remote studio because so they don't actually have offices anywhere. Yeah, so we're like scattered all over the globe. We've got some people in Europe. We've got some people in America. They're based in Canada. It's been great so far.
Wow, that's cool. And you're doing concept art for them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I want to know more. Watching. What have you been watching, Vicky?
I'm rewatching 30 Rock.
Nice.
Aw,
Awesome.
yeah. I miss
Yeah.
that era of comedy on TV. And 30 Rock is just one of those things that me and my husband bonded over when we met. Yeah, we're sitting down for a rewatch right now.
I was just thinking about how weird it is that we eat birds.
Yeah. There's so many good one-liners.
Or, this is how I cry now. And then the water is pouring out of her mouth. Oh, it's amazing. So good. How about you, Veronica?
So mine is actually a music video I recently watched, which really captured my interest. So there's this new artist called Nobody's Wolf Child, and she's a British kind of indie folk artist. I recently found a music video that came out for her song Selkie Girl. It is a gorgeously stop motion animated music video. Definitely check it out because the puppets are made by an artist called Anya Bose, who does these like creaturey, fey, wolfish puppets. And then there's also these paper cutout puppets that create these silhouette animations. And it is beyond gorgeous.
Wow.
The song combined with that music video, it's just so good. Like a mini movie.
Wow. Well, I've been watching Severance. Is anybody...
Oh, yeah.
Heard so much about it, but didn't get into it yet.
It's very rare that a show resonates the same kind of geeky frequencies or geeky and emotional frequencies that Lost did. Severance, it's a very different show than Lost, but it definitely takes me back to my original days of my Lost fandom. Oh my God. It's weird, but it's also gorgeous.
I feel like if this was a different era, the entire world would be talking about Severance all the time. But TV consumption has changed a lot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the people who I talk to it about are obsessed. I love having that like conspiratorial, like what's going on. And it's so well crafted and it's such a beautiful show. And I'm so excited every week. The reason I'm watching 30 Rock right now is because it's really hard to get me to watch something new. But Severance is one of those ones where every week I'm locked in.
We anticipate every new episode. Yeah.
You guys are hyping this up.
I'm excited to talk to you about it. Yeah, that's awesome. So how about playing, Vicky? Any games?
Currently, I want to start playing Infinity Nikki because I played the phone version. It's a dress-up game, but people are like, oh, it's like Breath of the Wild, but also dress up. And I'm like, ooh, okay.
What?
Oh, wow.
Now there's like a Nintendo Switch version. That's next on my list.
Yeah, that sounds promising. How about you, Veronica?
Well, speaking of Breath of the Wild, I'm still slogging my way through Tears of the Kingdom. These games are massive, but gorgeous. Yeah. Everything to be said of Breath of the Wild is true of Tears of the Kingdom in terms of visual design and all the beauty of it. And I really love how the story has taken some turns in this sequel.
Yeah.
So currently working on them monster medals.
It didn't hook me right away, but I went back to it months later. And I was a lot less busy at the time, so maybe that also had something to do with it. But I really, really liked that game a lot.
I think there's a certain magic that Breath of the Wild had in its novelty, and I think Tears of the Kingdom in some ways overstays its welcome.
Yeah, and Tears of the Kingdom does feel a bit like, here's all of the ideas that we had that didn't go into Breath of the Wild, and now we're just going to put them all on top of Breath of the Wild. And so it does have this kind of the day after Thanksgiving leftovers sort of feel to it, but it's still really good. Like it's still really delicious, but it is a little bit like, this isn't quite an arranged meal.
Oh, man.
It's just still a lot of really good stuff. But yeah, I've been playing again Doom 2016, which I've played through many times, but this game is so underrated, I think. I think it did well, and it wasn't by any means unsuccessful, but it's just so elegant, and which sounds weird to say about a game where you're just dismembering demons and things like that, but it's so beautifully designed. Their depiction of hell is just so gorgeous. It's like, wow, this is so pretty. I want to go here. The gameplay is just so weirdly calming, as sort of vigorous and visceral as it is. Finally, how about listening? Vicky, any music recommendations?
Loving the Doechii album, which she just won her best rap album. Amazing. But also I am loving the podcast If Books Could Kill, It's Michael Hobbs and Peter Shamshiri, and they talk about a lot of self-help, but a lot of like business books from the 2000s and debunk a lot of stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I did. I listened to Outliers and Freakonomics. I listened to both of those, yeah, because I really liked both of those books.
I mean, me too. It turns out that there's no fact-checking standard for nonfiction books.
Right.
What?
So, yeah, if you didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that, but that is insane.
You could just say whatever.
You can just say whatever. Oh, that seems to be a theme of recent history. How about you, Veronica?
Ooh, so one that's been on my current playthrough is one of my favorite bands, The Killers. A lot of people kind of listened to Hot Fuss and then dropped off the face of the earth and like, oh yeah, whatever, 2000s music, who cares? But as a fan, I've kept up with, everything they release. I think one of their very underrated albums is actually the one that came out a while ago, but it's their most recent one, Pressure Machine. I just love how introspective and honest it is. Obviously, as a long-term fan, I love the beginning stuff. I love those high energy albums where it's Brandon singing his heart out and all the rest of the band, playing amazingly. But with Pressure Machine, it's not acoustic, but it's got a lot more of that kind of acoustic vibe to it. And it's just gorgeous to see how the guys have grown and matured and how they're incorporating their new and mature selves and the things that they deal with now as older people, as opposed to, what they were singing about when they were teenagers and young adults. It's just a gorgeous album. Definitely check it out if you haven't.
Yeah, definitely will. That's great.
I saw them live last year. Oh, amazing. They're so good live.
Oh, dude. Chris, if you haven't seen The Killers live, we need to arrange this because they're very, very cool.
I decided to just go with the album I listened to this morning while I was driving to the cafe to work. And that was Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. She's part of Boy Genius, which you can't go wrong. Both of their albums are amazing. And then she has some solo work as well, as do the other members of Boy Genius. I'm still a bleeding heart romantic, but especially when I was a teenager, and the sort of walks at nighttime, listening to my Walkman, and in a way kind of craving that heartache that is kind of weirdly comforting when it's connected to music.
Right. It's like that nostalgia of that moment almost.
Yeah, exactly. And this album makes me feel that way. It's so gorgeous. Her lyrics are just, disarming, like disarmingly vulnerable. Her singing voice is gorgeous and her arrangements are melancholic and sublime. So that's a serious plug for Punisher.
So excited to check it out. That sounds like just the kind of stuff I would love to listen to.
When you just need to, cry.
Oh, yeah.
Vicky, thank you so much for joining us for this call. This has been very inspiring and I'm all revved up. I thought this was going to be like, okay, I'll finish the podcast and then go wind down, but actually now I just want to go draw pages.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you guys for having me. I had a great time. I always love seeing your faces and hanging out.
Oh, likewise. We're your hosts, Chris Oatley
and Veronica Kosofsky. Our production coordinator is Mari Gonzalez Curia.
And this show is made possible by the Magic Box Academy.
Subscribe to this podcast on any of the major platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, YouTube.
And join our email list at magicboxacademy.com for notifications about future episodes, courses, and mentorship opportunities.
Get new digital art brushes with accompanying tutorial guides every month for an entire year with your free membership to the Magic Box Academy Brush Club. Join today at digitalartbrushes.com.
And until next time, friends, remember, you're a better artist than you think.